Welcome to Matt Crafts. Today will be our first episode on grass terrain, and we will be creating these basic grass terrain tiles today. First, I'll show you the terrain in action. First, I had to think about what I could use to make this grass terrain, and I had a really good idea. I thought, why not use what there's already in nature? So I went outside, I grabbed some tools, and I got to work. That's what I ended up with, and I took it inside. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work how I wanted it to. The minis kept falling off, and yeah, I had a whole lot of dirt. So I got thinking again. I came up with a different idea. Now, one last step before we get started, I'm going to tell you what you need to complete this build. First, I'll cover the essential items you will need. First, you will need an alpha knife to cut foam, which we also need, obviously. Then we will need some tweezers, a carpenter square, PVA glue, some grass flocking, black paint, brown paint, some parchment paper, a spraying bottle, and isopropyl alcohol. Now, there are two more items I recommend when you do this build. They are really useful and make your process a lot faster and more durable. Number one is Mod Podge, and number two is a hot wire table. To take your terrain to the next level, you will need a few more other things. I use these in my build as well, but you don't really need them. The things I recommend you get as well are magnets, earth flocking, different types of grass flocking, so different shades of it, grass tufts, a hot glue gun, nail, and last but not least, a plastic tweezer. I have links in the description to every item I use in this video. So for this grass terrain, we're going to build 5 different pieces. One is a normal square. I would recommend doing 35 of the normal square ones. The next piece you will need is a corner piece. I recommend doing 19 of these corner pieces. The next piece is the edge piece that goes on the edge of the terrain to give it a more fleshed out look. I recommend you do 25 pieces of these. Next, we have a normal square terrain piece, but with 2 edges, not with 1 edge. I don't use them that often. I did 5 pieces of these and I do use them occasionally. And the last piece is a square with 3 edges, a sort of an end piece. That does come in useful sometimes. I only did 3 of these. That equals 88 3x3 inch squares. So let's get started. The first step is to cut 3 inch by 3 inch squares. That equals 7.62 centimeters. Now you can either do that with a knife and a carpenter square or a hot wire table. With a hot wire table, it's the same principle, it just goes much faster, and it's also easier because you don't have to concentrate so much at getting perfect cuts. Let's get cutting. After you've cut the squares, it is time for the holy magnets. I use them for stable trees, for transport, and for quick environment changes between sessions. Now, I had a lot of trial and error with these magnets trying to fit them in. The way I did it is I started making a hole in the middle of the tile with a nail. First, you need to mark out the middle of the tile using a carpenter square. When you've done that, you take a nail and make a hole where you want the magnet to go. After that, you use a few magnets and stick them in the hole to make sure that they fit in the hole, but don't push too deep, only so that one magnet sort of vanishes in the foam, because you don't want the magnet to be too deep, because if it's too deep you will lose some of that magnetic power. And you don't really need to worry about the orientation of the magnets. Well, not at first. Your first tile can be it can be north-south or south-north, it doesn't matter. But all of the other tiles that come after it should have the same orientation. So you do need to watch out that you put the magnets in all the same way, but it doesn't matter which way you choose. First, I put the magnets on something magnetic like a ruler. In my case, I used my carpenter square. Next, you need the nail that you did the hole with in the tile, and some plastic tweezers and some parchment paper. You put the parchment paper over the nail, and then you take a magnet and put it on the nail, so the parchment paper is between the nail and the magnet. Then you need to get your hot glue gun ready. Make sure to stick this in and get it heated up so it's ready to squirt its load everywhere. And then you take your nail and press it into the hole and slide it away from the magnet. Don't lift it, because that'll take the magnet back out. Just slide it to the side and the magnet should stay in there just fine. Then you take your finger and rub on the parchment paper to make sure the glue is nice and flat, so that you don't get any edges. You can also press in just a bit, but don't make sure you don't press in too much, because as I said, we want the magnet to be sort of just maybe under the foam, but not a lot, so we don't lose a lot of power. Now, what you can also do, if you don't want to measure out every time where the magnet goes, you can make a prop like me. I just took a screw and stuck it into the middle of a foam tile that is also 3 by 3 inches and stuck it there with hot glue so it won't move. And then I just pressed the two tiles together and knew where the middle was. That won't be as exact as if you use a ruler, but it should be good enough. After you've done that, it's time to add magnets to the other side of the tiles for trees or for stones you want to put on the tiles. What you do is you just choose random spots where you put magnets. You can put like 1, 2 or 3 magnets on one tile. I recommend just varying it a bit, and just use the same method to put them in. But you need to be really careful with this, because these magnets have got to be of the different orientation. Put 2 tiles above each other, and the bottom sides should stick to the top side of a different tile like this. But don't worry if you've messed up, that's no problem at all. You just take your hot glue gun, make the glue hot again, and you can take the magnet back out. But be sure that you do get it right most of the time, because it's really annoying taking the magnets back out, and it does take quite a bit of time. You don't need to put in magnets into every single tile that you're doing. On the top side, of course. On the bottom side you would want to do every tile, but on the top side for trees and whatever, stones and stuff, you only need like a third or maybe half. And when you've done that, we can go on to the next step. So first, we're going to start with the square with one edge. Take a square and your hot wire table or your knife, wiggle it through so you get sort of a wavy edge like this. Next step is to pluck out some of the foam on the underside of the wavy edge like this. When you've done that, you bevel the edge and voila, you have a really super edge on your terrain piece. Now for the next piece, it's the one with 2 edges. I did 6 of these. To do this, you take the piece and you just do the wiggle action on 2 edges of the piece, so double the fun. Don't forget to pluck out the underside with some tweezers and bevel the edges. Next up is the corner piece. That's fairly easy too. All you need is a pen and connect 2 corners which are on the opposite side. Do a wavy edge or whatever, how you want your corner to look. After that, you just take your hot wire table or your knife and wiggle it through the foam. Then you bevel the edge and don't forget to pluck out the underside with your tweezers, and you're done with the corners. I did 19 of these pieces. After that, it's time for the tail with 3 edges. So what you do is you connect 2 corners, but this time they're on the same side. Also with sort of a roundish nature, as you can see here. Then you take the piece and wiggle it for your hot wire tail, but this time you really get a lot of wiggle action, so make it count. Then you bevel the edges and take out the under half of the wiggled side.
I decided to use black paint and Mod Podge to coat the tiles.
But don't forget to mark the underside of your tiles where the magnets are with an X. So you'll find them later, if not you won't know where they are anymore. I recommend putting your tiles on some parchment paper to dry after you've painted them with Mod Podge, if not they'll stick a bit, which is really annoying. After that you slap your brown paint onto the tiles for an earthy undertone. The next step is actually my favorite one, which is adding the flock. For this you really need only 1 flock of grass terrain and it will look awesome. But if you really want to take it to the next level, you should take some different grass flocking and a few earth shades as well to make it really pop. What you do is you add some PVA glue where you want your flocking and then you just go to town. What I do is I just take different flockings and put them on however I think it looks good. You can just do whatever you want, you can't really go wrong here. When you've done that, I just dump on 1 layer of flocking over all of it, and then I just put some water on it or isopropyl alcohol and keep adding flock to make it look even better. When you add your flocking, make sure to keep the spaces where the magnets are fairly free of flocking, like only like 1 or 2 layers maximum, because if you cover it too much, the strength of the magnet will really be affected, and it's also a bit harder to put their trees there if it's not a flat surface. So just keep in mind where the magnets are, be a bit more cautious with adding too much flock. If you want an earth patch, just add some brown terrain on top like this and it'll look pretty awesome when you're done. So to make sure that this also stays on and doesn't rub off, what you want to do is cover it all in isopropyl alcohol and then drown it with watered down Mod Podge. you can add 2 layers of this and let it dry in between each one to make it really super hard and make sure it doesn't come off when you're playing or storing it. Now everything looks amazing already, but if you really want to go an extra step, you can also add grass tufts and flowers to your terrain builds. Now when you've done that, we're finished, and you have some awesome grass terrain that you can use at your gaming tables. Thanks for watching this episode of Matt Crafts. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like it and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. You can also support me on Patreon. It would help me a lot. And with that, I'm out.
And the Lord said unto John, Come forth, and you will receive eternal life. But John came last and had to eat the biscuit.